So this is a sort of question. So what influence does the relationship between commissioners, providers and young people have on the improvement in quality? And I think we all hear different sort of stories about what's happening between providers and commissioners. And I suppose being on the provider side, I tend to hear stories most from my provider colleagues. So we're all sort of, after a conference, we're sort of having a drink and saying, oh my God, those bloody commissioners, in this service or that service, they don't listen and they're demanding and so on and so forth. And then you meet some commissioners and, they're sort of genuinely frustrated that they want to have some influence over this service and are sort of, struggling to find ways to exert that influence. I was at a conference run by Lankerley Chase and also by the Social Research Unit. And it was very interesting there's a group of young people and commissioners who were talking together for the first day. And what transpired is that the young people had no idea that commissioners actually cared about them and their outcomes and how they were doing in life. They just sort of thought there was this sort of faceless sort of bureaucracy. With providers, similarly, young people, we had just been at an event at the Tavistock with a group of young people and parents, talking to the chief executive and others. And that dilemma, are they, when they say they meet people and they can tell instantly that the person they're coming to help for doesn't actually care, they're just sort of looking for data, and they can tell that they're not motivated and all they really want to do is go home at 5 o'clock. Is that correct? Or is it after years and years of meeting people who they don't trust, or they've learned not to trust? Is that a sort of lens that they're looking for? And what can providers do to be more transparent and available to clients? So these are all hypotheses that I hope we can discuss. So one way of improving quality is to get data. So here we are, this is lots and lots of data. This is raw data that our Camden commissioners asked us to supply. And so it's a bit of a sort of journey.
Yes, very much so, over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So what we set up was these quarterly monitoring meetings, so that it's hard work all round,
yeah.
but every single team manager meets someone from the commissioning team once a quarter to go through the raw data of all the patients that are being seen within their service. They also provide a report about reflections on the challenges facing the service, some clinical vignettes, etc. And when you get all of this, it's quite hard to make much of. But I think the point is that because every quarter this data is being presented, it's really motivated the team managers to want to produce more and more and more of it, so that over a period of, and then I think there was one time when we had to cancel the quarterly monitoring meeting because everybody was on holiday, and came back, and we thought we were doing really well because we're getting lots of outcome reports and our feedback. I thought, great, the service is actually starting to transform. It's becoming part of routine practice to produce this data. And lo and behold, after 1 quarter of missing meetings, the amount of data just plummeted. Everybody, the minute the eye was off the ball, people stopped paying attention. So I think it just showed, how long you probably have to sort of keep going with this, and how difficult culture change is. So the other thing to flag up, maybe you could talk to this, Sarah, is Camden CCG produced this perspective, and in it, this was building on what the PCT had said before, that they would continue to collaborate with all providers and partners across health, local authority, social care and quality sectors, who've already developed a commitment to developing integration across organisational boundaries. So they're explicitly talking about breaking down these rigid boundaries so that people talk to each other. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is sort of from the CCG's original prospectus when we became a legal entity last year. And actually I was sort of talking to Andy about it on the way down, and then kind of for our second iteration, we've gone even further and said that actually we want to move away from an adversarial relationship between commissioners and providers, and we've actually kind of named it in those terms. Because actually it should be about collaboration, it should be about being equal partners around the table and having a voice. And similarly, you know, that's not just with providers, but that's with our young people, with their parents, you know, with the other relevant stakeholders. And really kind of challenging those perceptions of kind of hierarchy and how that relationship works, which is where I think that kind of run into difficulties in the past, where there has been this quite sort of kind of punitive attitude towards the, you know, in the way that the commissioners have interfaced with providers.
Yeah, I mean, I had a sort of personal experience. You weren't there, Sarah, but at this steering group that we were at, I presented a paper, and there was a quite sort of odd dynamic in this group that I won't sort of go into, but basically to do with power, I think. And for some reason, it seemed to suit the group to attack me rather sort of openly. But this wasn't labelled as attack, it was labelled as challenge, which was a sort of legitimate thing to do. Anyway, so I've got this new idea, it's called being part of a challenge fest. So one person started off, this professor, started you know, sort of opening challenges, and someone else thought, oh, this is good, let's sort of get in with another challenge, you know. And then the newly appointed head of the GP group, I could see, you know, sort of following suit. Said, oh, I can think of a good challenge. Anyway, so it was like sort of death by challenge. And I mean, luckily, you know, my head was sort of buzzing with the politics that I was aware of, and I didn't take it personally. And you know, but I still felt pretty pissed off at the end of it, and was in no mood to do business with this steering group, and thought all sorts of bad thoughts in my head afterwards. So, you know, I think at the moment, I think that culture of challenge, people can get a bit sort of carried away with the sort of excitement of it. So just a few examples of the exchanges that the Camden CAMHS service have had with the commissioners. So we've got early intervention service, and young people between the ages of 14 up to sort of 21 with chronic disorders, usually psychosis. So rather than you know, everybody's going to get better, these are rapid-rated HONOS scores over time. So green is improving, amber is staying about the same, and red is getting worse. So you can see down very clearly here, this is a group of young people who are getting better and worse. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad service, it just means that this is the group. So that's quite sort of informative for...
Yeah. And I think that that's been really important as a commissioner to be able to kind of understand the therapeutic dynamics and what's going on within the service, because actually, you know, when we started saying, well, actually we want to be collecting the data in this way, and we want to kind of look at, can you colour code it, because I can never remember whether SDQ or higher score is better, or whether on the CGAS it's lower, this sort of thing. And can you colour code, and everybody's like, well, we don't, you know, there's fear about showing commissioners that things have got worse, but actually it's about us understanding what's going on, you know, so this EIS, as we'll, you know, be aware, young people with a chronically relapsing condition, you know, actually having people within that service that are stable is a really, you know, a really good thing. If they're getting better, that's great. If they're getting worse, that's understandable because of the nature of the condition. And I think, you know, it's about kind of having that dialogue which is educative to the commissioner so that they really understand what's going on. And some of the work that we did going back sort of 3 or 4 years was to get service specifications established for all of the different service lines. So it's like 14 different service lines within Camden CAMHS. And I think that felt quite a sort of, well, one, quite arbitrary, that we were wanting to write down what it was that everybody had, but actually you can't be effective as Commissioner unless you understand what the services are delivering, and that's kind of one mechanism through which, and the quarterly monitoring meetings and some of the other stuff that we'll talk about, it is all part of that. But unless you've got a starting point for what, you know, to know what the services are, then you know, you can only come to accountability from a point of knowledge.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of formal and informal interactions. Ethnicity. So with the data you can start digging in. So that looks a bit confusing, but on the next slide you can see that our two generic teams, North and South, white people were, there were more white families in the service than you would expect from the JSNA population demographics. I don't think it will surprise that many people. However, we've got a service here called Camden Malts, which is working within a social services department as child protection, looked after children, etc. And there you can see that white families are underrepresented, and that black, other black, African, black, Caribbean are overrepresented. And the Bangladeshi population, you can see, is sort of nearly at the population level. So okay, so on the one hand that's great, on the other hand, my God, what's going on? You know, that the black and ethnic minority groups are being sort of singled out for safeguarding and social care. So I suppose, but that's another debate, you know, and so without the data you can't have the debate, but then, so more questions are being asked when you get the data, and more opportunities to dig in. DNAs, this is another, when people that come to appointments, another sort of big issue. So this is all focusing in on different bits of this big report. So you can see here, there's, on the report we have total clinic appointments, total community appointments. So you can see here a big chunk of the services happening in schools and GP practice. DNAs and cancelled by patients. And so, you know, a little alarm bell was ringing. One of our services here, South Service, suddenly became an outlier. I think there was something to do with the...
Yeah, we had people familiar with the commissioning support units, the sort of work with the clusters of boroughs, and sat sort of in the autumn at one of these commissioning support unit meetings looking at the trust data, and they break it down for adults and adolescents and other CAMHS and then Camden CAMHS, and it's at Camden CAMHS DNA rate 22%, and everybody sort of looked at me and said, why is that? And I said, no, but we'll find out. And you know, it was a really awkward moment, quite embarrassing. And then actually we've been able to use the data that we were collecting through the quarterly monitoring to dig down into that and find out exactly what was going on. And you did some work, you know, you picked up where they were at.
Let's make, you know, go to it, say it was straight on the phone. I've just been at this meeting and this has happened and I didn't know this. You know, why didn't I know about this? What's going on? You know, so it's, you know, it's goes like this, doesn't it?
Give and take.
But the consequence of that was another sort of dive into the figures. I mean, one thing that came out of this 22% was the first attend DNA rate for this service is that 50%. 50%.
54%. Probably slide.
It's on the next slide. Oh yeah, that's right. 54% of people who failed their first appointment came to their subsequent appointment. So I think what the service was doing is they were using they weren't putting a lot of effort into the first appointment. They send out a letter and see if people came. and then if they didn't come, they'd have another look at referral. And I mean, obviously some people you let go, and there's other people you want to chase. And 54 people got chased up, 54% came to their subsequent appointment. But that's not really very satisfactory. You know, it's a big moment, your first appointment. And so this service now, I think their first appointment DNA is down to about 10%, and their subsequent down to about 8%. So, you know, they looked at their admin systems, how they were contacting clients by text, by letter, by phone call, and so things are looking better. But that, you know, so the problem there is that within the provider, I wasn't being given the heads up. These people trooped off at this meeting with the Commission Support Unit without any. You would have liked the heads on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really talks to some discussions we were having with young people this morning about the quality of that initial contact and how important it is, whether it's, you know, talking to somebody who's admin or reception and booking that initial appointment through to actually their first contact with a clinician, that they really make judgments, you know, on that kind of first contact and make a decision about whether they want to engage or not. So it's really critical that we're getting it right at that point, because otherwise, I mean, we're still, you know, saying the subsequent appointments went up to 54%, but that's still 46% that didn't convert into becoming active cases or you know, undertaking an assessment. So it's really important.
And lots of people have got very mixed feelings about coming to CAMHS, or going anywhere really, but things are sort of professional. And so, you know, you have to be aware of that and maybe sort of working with that ambivalence and expecting that ambivalence and trying to encourage and support families to attend.
Just on that, Oxley's did a really nice film called I've Got a Letter, which was on YouTube, and it's of a young person getting this letter from CAMHS, which for the people, the service sending it out, it's a sort of nice invite to come, and it plays it from the young person's perspective about just how difficult it is. The letter's got all the right information to get you to the appointment, but from the young person's perspective, it's just not at all helpful. It's still baffling, and the complexities of getting from having this letter to actually getting to the service are just, you know, there's so many different hurdles. Really nice video, I think.
And interesting.
What's it called again, I think it's called I've Got a Letter, or I Got This Letter, or something like that.
Interestingly, hearing it from a parent's perspective this morning as well, and it was a really mixed group of parents, but the overwhelming perception was that they were being referred to this service because they were going to have their child removed. And, you know, it wasn't a group of parents who had come through social care, it was a really kind of generic mixed group, but that was the overwhelming perception. And I think, yeah, getting that information out and communication right from the outset is so critical.
A lot of the time, like, the young people don't even know where they're going.
Yeah.
Like, you get told, oh, you're being sent to CAMHS with no idea where it is. And then, like, if you've been through them before, I've been through CAMHS like 4 times, and you're waiting for proper help. Like, if I've been through once, I don't want to go through it again and again and again. And if you've never been through it at all, and it says mental health services, you instantly think, oh God, what's wrong with me? Because it has the word mental in the title.
Absolutely. I'll come on to that. Yeah, and the young people this morning say about making instant judgments about whether, I said this earlier, before I repeat myself, but whether people are actually motivated.
Yeah.
Do I care about your problems, or do I just want to go home?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you know if I do care or not? So, yeah. So we'll come back to that. Child ESQ, so that's the feedback questionnaire about the service that we try to get everyone to complete after 6 months, and the time the case closes. And we're very lucky, you know, we do very well in things like being listened to, easy to talk to, etc., etc., etc. Given enough explanation, which is just what you're saying, why am I coming? Lots of people said they didn't really know about if they had enough explanation about why they were going there, and we've actually failed on that one. So But
no financial reward
no,
for
no
that.
financial reward. You failed our sequence on giving enough explanation. I think it talks to your...
When the young people fill in the form, is the clinician sitting with them at the time?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture, yeah. It can be.
We found in Hertfordshire, like, a lot of the time when we're giving feedback forms, no matter what it is, even if it's session by session monitoring,
Yeah.
the answers aren't accurate because the therapist is sitting there while you're filling it in, so you feel inclined to put a certain, like, to say it's all great because they're sitting there watching you.
Yeah, so what works better?
We're now looking into, like, either being given it to take away and bring back next week and then you can discuss it if you want to, or like the therapist even or doing it on like an iPad or something like that.
Yeah. Would an iPad be sort of private enough?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the trouble is that when we went through a phase of posting them and getting it back, and then I think we did go through a phase of giving them out to people, bring back, they didn't come back, you know, so it's...
And we've had assistant psychologists phoning up people and doing it like anonymously
Like
over the phone,
you
so
haven't
it's
met,
somebody you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And that's actually really improved the response rate, and people have, it certainly reading the comments when we sit in the monitoring meetings, it feels a lot more like people are happy to tell us what they don't think is very good. You know, we've got a much more kind of balanced view than, people just kind of going, it's all fine.
Yeah, although we do have comment. What I was going to say is that we were getting negative, although people were scoring, you know, ticking the box, it's the actual written comments that mean the most. And we were getting some feedback that our facilities weren't comfortable. People didn't... So this is a picture of our old waiting room, and this gave us some leverage over the managers, that when we were getting this feedback that people thought our waiting room wasn't comfortable, we were able to get some money to refurbish the waiting room, and we got a couple of artists in who work with young people to create that mural on the wall.
And that was an example of taking something that actually we've kind of mandated within the contract that you must do to satisfy the commissioners, you must do the HIESQ, but actually then being able to use it with your property services to be able to demonstrate that there was overwhelming feedback about the facilities, and to be able to get that done, and the treatment rooms refurbed as well. Which, you know, I think it shouldn't be about the information that's coming to the commissioners just being a kind of dry, arbitrary servicing the machine. It should actually be something that's quite dynamic and useful for providers as well.
Yeah. And on the subject of people not like mental health, we got that feedback. People didn't like mental health in our titles, so we ran a competition for Camden CAMHS to get a new name. And after 120 entries and lots of discussion in groups and young people's views, Open-Minded is the new name for our service. It's going to be launched in July, having a party. And then these are some of we're currently having a competition to get a logo. So
it's some of the designs were, we ran a competition for young people to kind of come up with a design, and then also some professionals decided that they were going to.
Yeah, well, I think this one here builds on the young person's design the most.
Yeah. So we've been running consultations, and we're doing a survey monkey that's been sent out to loads of service users at the moment, and they're voting on it. So I've had a quick peek at the interim results yesterday, so I know which one is in the lead by quite a considerable margin, but I'm not going to say because it doesn't close until Friday.
Yeah. And staff have got mixed feelings about this. I had one member of staff go completely off the deep end and say, "What's this all about? You know, I'm not going to work in a service that's called Open-Minded." You know, they felt that strongly about it. You know, but to hell with it. You know, this is what young people and families want. So, you know, that's our problem. Currently, we're looking at cases open for more than 2 years, trying to deal with the what's happened to other services. People worry about people being open too long.
Yes, absolutely.
And I thought it's just Tavistock, you know, they think that's what they do.
Endless psychotherapy.
A lifetime of psychotherapy. But so we have to. There's a lot of demand on the service. We have to be purposeful. I mean, hopefully, you'd agree that if you're going to go and see somebody, you see them for a reason. Why on earth would you want to go and see somebody if there wasn't a purpose, and the purpose was getting the help that you wanted? So I think everybody's combining on, and so the commissioners have sort of made this diktat, but actually it's very helpful. We sort of discussed it. We got the heads up ahead of time that this was happening, so the team leaders know about this. They're getting systems in place for regular review of all cases, not just urgent, worrying situations, but and why wouldn't you want to do that? Why on earth wouldn't you want to make sure that everything was being done for a reason?
And this is about kind of collaboratively responding to the challenges as well, because as we know, the parlous financial situation. I mean, we were just talking before about the fact that the local authority in Camden, having saved 80 million, has got another 70 million to find, and what we need to look about how we're getting the best out of the resources that are available, and we need to think about how can we, with a finite resource, how can we prioritise those, but still make sure that people that need the services are able to access them. And so looking at these, having this dialogue about the kind of the kind of nature of treatment, the length of treatment, the way that we move people through the service and on to other things. So it's a really important part of that.
So, last two slides. So this is the hypothesis, is that dialogue has particular meaning. It means listening to the other party without making judgments. It means suspending, so if, say something has to happen, you have a dialogue and you suspend decision making for that period of time, and you neutralise issues of status, so you speak to each other as equals. After that period of dialogue's over, then obviously you go back to where you are, and commissioners could put the service out to tender or whatever is the next thing that's going to happen. But it's important to have these periods of dialogue where, for example, the provider recognises the expertise of commissioners, because they probably don't sometimes. They think they know everything and they don't. And also the limitations of commissioners. The weaknesses in themselves. So I've often been in meetings, like that challenge fest thing, where I suddenly saw how other people saw me. They saw me like sort of NHS dinosaur, who was just totally stuck in my silo and in my sort of backward ways, and which I didn't like at all. And I suppose there was an element of truth in that, dare I say. Commissioners recognising the expertise of providers. I think that's very important when you're sort of empowered by commissioners to say, well, look, you know about this, tell me about this.
Yeah, and I think, what we were saying about before was that recognising one's own limitations as well, and sort of because very often as commissioners we're coming in and we're working in an area where we don't have a technical background. My background is teaching. I'm not a trained clinician, so you need to understand your own limitations and respect, as you say, respect and recognise the expertise of the providers and have that kind of.
Yeah, so obviously that calls for quite a bit of transparency about who you are and what your aims and objectives are and what your expertise is. There's often boundary issues, so occasionally I'll hear things that I probably shouldn't about what's happening on the commissioning side, and I have to be quite careful to manage that. And Sarah certainly hears things that I think our operating officers would sort of wake in their boots if they knew what Sarah knows about. So the things that slip out of these quarterly monitoring meetings. But so there has to be some trust there that can be managed. So, I thought that was last slide. But anyway, so recently, for example, co-production. So we're trying to set up a service for 16 to 24-year-olds who really don't do very well when they, at 18, suddenly they're expected to be all grown up and adult and go to adult